My wife mocked me to her friends. My clueless husband makes me coffee every morning after my wild nights with my lover. I exposed her affair during her big work presentation. She was fired and socially shunned. Carmen and I had been married for 6 years, together for 9 in total, and I thought we had built something solid in Valencia. I am Diego, 38 years old. I work as a regional sales manager for a manufacturing company, and Carmen is 34. She works as a marketing coordinator at a tech startup downtown. We had our routines, you know. I would make her coffee every morning before work. She would come home late from what she called client dinners, and we had settled into what I believed was a comfortable marriage. Sure, things were not as passionate as they used to be, but that is normal after almost a decade together, right? That is what I kept telling myself. The weekend that changed everything started like any other. I had planned this golf trip with my colleagues. We had been looking forward to it for months. We had booked a nice course about 2 hours away, made hotel reservations, the whole deal. But on Friday afternoon, the weather service issued severe storm warnings for the entire region. We are talking possible tornado activity, flooding, the kind of weather that makes you cancel outdoor plans without a second thought. My friend Marcos called me around 3 in the afternoon. Diego, we are canceling the golf weekend, he told me. The weather is going to be terrible, and, honestly, none of us wants to get stuck on some golf course when the sky falls. I was disappointed, of course, but I also secretly felt a little relieved. Work had been intense lately, and the idea of a quiet weekend at home actually sounded quite appealing. Carmen had mentioned that she was having Sophia and Patricia over for one of her girls' nights, which usually meant wine, gossip, and them taking over our sunroom late into the night. Perfect, I thought. I could surprise her by coming home early. Maybe even join them for a drink before retiring to give her space. I have always gotten along well with her friends, and Sophia, especially, always seemed to enjoy my company. The drive home felt different somehow, as if I were carrying this little secret gift of surprise. I even stopped at the supermarket to buy that expensive wine that Carmen loves, but says we cannot afford regularly. I was genuinely excited to see the look on her face when I walked through the door unexpectedly. You know that feeling when you think you are going to make someone's day? That warm anticipation that makes you drive a little faster and smile to yourself. That was me, completely oblivious to what awaited me. I pulled into our driveway around 7:30, and I could immediately hear laughter coming from the back porch. Loud, slightly drunken laughter that carried across our neighborhood. Carmen's laugh had always been infectious, and hearing it mixed with Sophia's and Patricia's voices made me smile as I grabbed my bag and the wine from the car. I decided to go in through the front door and surprise them from inside the house, rather than walking around immediately. Sometimes the element of surprise makes these moments even better. I opened the front door as quietly as possible, put my bag in the entryway, and headed towards the kitchen to perhaps prepare her wine surprise properly. That is when I heard it. Carmen's voice, slightly slurred but crystal clear, floating through the open patio doors. I am telling you, girls, I have the perfect situation, she was saying, and something in her tone made me freeze in the kitchen. Diego makes me coffee every morning like the devoted husband. He never questions where I have been the night before, and I can have the best of both worlds. Sophia's voice chimed in. 3 years. Though, Carmen, how do you keep it up? 3 years. Keep what up? My heart started beating differently, as if it were suddenly working harder to pump blood through my body. It is easy when your husband is that trusting, Carmen continued, and I could hear the clinking of wine glasses. I just tell him I am at client dinners, and meanwhile I am at Andres' apartment, doing things Diego has not even thought about in years. The laughter that followed felt like ice water in my veins. Patricia's voice joined the conversation. And he never suspects a thing, even with you coming home so late. Are you kidding? Carmen's voice was getting louder, more animated. Last month, when Diego's mom had that emergency surgery and he was at the hospital all night, I told him I was too overwhelmed to visit her, too emotional to be around hospitals. Do you know where I really was? At Andres' house, having a great time, while my pathetically trusting husband was holding his mother's hand alone. The bottle of wine in my hands suddenly felt incredibly heavy. I set it on the counter as carefully as possible, my hands trembling in a way I had never experienced before. Sophia was now practically cackling. You are terrible, Carmen. But honestly, if Diego is that naive, that is on him, right? Carmen agreed enthusiastically. I mean, Who believes someone has client dinners 3 nights a week? Andres works in finance, makes twice as much as Diego, and he really knows how to treat a woman. Meanwhile, Diego is happy to have his little domestic routine and never asks any real questions. My legs felt unsteady, as if the foundation of our house had suddenly shifted beneath me. 3 years, 3 whole years of lies, of me making her coffee every morning after she had spent the night with another man. 3 years of client dinners that never existed. 3 years of being the devoted husband, while she laughed about it with her friends on our back porch, drinking wine that I had probably paid for. The betrayal hit me in waves. First the shock, then the humiliation, then something darker and more calculating than I had ever felt before. I stood there in my own kitchen, listening to my wife of 6 years mock me to her friends, and I realized that the man I thought I was, trusting, loving, devoted, had been nothing more than a convenient fool in someone else's story. What happened next surprised even me. Instead of running out and confronting her, something cold and calculating took over. I quietly backed out of the kitchen, grabbed my bag, and slipped out the front door like a ghost. My hands were still shaking as I sat in my car, but my mind was crystal clear for the first time in years. I drove straight to my brother-in-law Roberto's house on the other side of town. And when he opened the door and saw my face, he did not even ask any questions. "Carmen is having an affair," I said simply, and Roberto just stepped aside to let me in. Roberto has always been the steady one in the family, the kind of person who thinks before he acts, and that night, he probably saved me from doing something stupid. "Are you sure about this, Diego?" he asked as we sat in his living room. "Completely sure." I heard it straight from her mouth. Roberto nodded slowly. "Okay, what is your plan?" It was then that I realized I actually had one, as if my subconscious had been working overtime. "I am going to document everything, get a lawyer, and make sure she cannot spin this story when the time comes." Roberto offered me his guest room, and I spent the next 3 weeks living this bizarre double life. During the day, I went to work as if nothing had happened. I would come home to Carmen as the devoted husband she had been mocking. And at night, I would return to Roberto's house to methodically plan my response. It was as if I had become a detective investigating my own life. The first breakthrough came when I remembered our shared cloud storage. Carmen had always been careless with technology, and, sure enough, when I logged in, there it was. 3 years of evidence that she had been too careless or too confident to hide. Photos of her and Andres at restaurants I had never been to, wearing clothes I had never seen, looking at him the way she used to look at me. Videos that turned my stomach. Messages that were worse than the conversation I had overheard because they showed just how calculated all of this had been. "Diego is working late again," a message from 2 years ago said. "Perfect timing for us." Another from last Christmas. "I told Diego I was out shopping for his gift when I was really picking out lingerie for you." The financial evidence was even more damning. Our joint credit card statements told a story I had been blind to. Expensive dinners for two at restaurants she claimed were client meetings, hotel charges during my business trips when she was supposedly home alone, gifts from jewelry stores I had never set foot in. The worst part was discovering charges from the day of my mother's emergency surgery. While I was holding my mom's hand in the hospital, terrified that she might not make it through the operation, Carmen had charged a romantic dinner for two in a hotel room. That is when the cold calculation turned into something sharper, something that felt like justice. I started taking pictures of everything in our house, our wedding gifts, furniture we had bought together, jewelry I had given her, documents showing what we owned. I opened a separate bank account and started gradually transferring money, nothing dramatic that would trigger alerts, just small amounts that added up over time. I found a divorce lawyer who specialized in adultery cases, a sharp woman named Maria Fernandez, who listened to my story without judgment and laid out my options with clinical precision. "With evidence like this," she said during our consultation, "you are in a very strong position. Spain is one of the few countries that still recognizes adultery as a cause for divorce, which affects alimony considerations." I gave her copies of everything, and she began to build what she called my case file. Meanwhile, Carmen was acting strangely at home, almost as if she sensed that something had changed. She started being unusually attentive, making dinner more often, asking about my day with renewed interest. "You seem different lately," she told me one night as I was washing the dishes. Is everything okay at work? Just a busy season, I replied. And technically, that was not a lie. I was busier than ever, just not with work. Sometimes she would come up behind me and hug me, and I had to fight every instinct not to pull away. The hardest part was maintaining the routine she had so brutally mocked. Every morning, I would make her coffee, watching her drink it while knowing she had been with Andres the night before. Every time she said she had a client dinner, I would kiss her goodbye and wish her luck. Then I would head to Roberto's to continue my investigation. This is incredible evidence, Maria told me during our second meeting. But, Diego, are you sure you want to go nuclear? Once we file these papers and present this evidence, there is no going back. I thought about my mother in the hospital, about 3 years of lies, about being called pathetically trusting by women drinking wine on my back porch. I am sure, but I want to time this perfectly. That is when I started planning the execution phase. I researched Andres, found out about his girlfriend, Lucia, through social media, confirmed Carmen's work schedule, and mapped out exactly how this was going to unfold. The man who had been making coffee for his cheating wife every morning was gone. In his place was someone who understood that trust, once broken so completely, could not be repaired, it could only be avenged. Carmen had spent 3 years carefully building a lie, and I was going to spend 3 weeks carefully dismantling her entire world. The perfect opportunity came on a Tuesday morning at the end of October. Carmen had been talking for weeks about her company's quarterly presentation, how important it was for her career, how the executives from the main office would be there to evaluate everyone's performance. She had been stressed about it, staying up late preparing slides, practicing her presentation in front of the bathroom mirror. It was almost poetic. She had built her entire deception around fake work events, and now a real work event was going to be the stage for her downfall. That morning, I made her coffee as usual, kissed her goodbye, and wished her luck on her presentation. You are going to kill it, I told her, and I meant it in ways she could not imagine. As soon as her car disappeared down our street, I put my plan into motion. I had spent the previous night creating anonymous email accounts and preparing evidence packages. For Lucia, Andres' girlfriend, I compiled the most damning photos and messages, along with a simple note. I thought you should know what your boyfriend has been doing for the last 3 years. I am sorry you have to find out this way. I included screenshots of Andres' messages to Carmen about their hotel meetups, photos of them together at romantic dinners, and credit card receipts showing his gifts to her. For Elena, Carmen's sister, who had always been protective of Carmen, but had also always treated me fairly, I prepared a different package. Elena deserved context, not just raw evidence. My note to her was longer, explaining how I had discovered the affair, how long it had been going on, and how Carmen had mocked me to her friends. I included the audio recording I had made on my phone that night on the back porch. Yes, I had gone back the next day and recorded their conversation when they inevitably repeated similar stories. I sent both packages through anonymous email accounts, timing them to arrive just as Carmen's presentation was beginning. The beauty of modern technology is that you can destroy someone's life from a coffee shop across town with just a few clicks. I then spent the day at work acting normal, taking some client calls, reviewing sales reports, but my phone was buzzing with updates from Roberto, who was monitoring social media for any developments. Around 2 in the afternoon, he sent me a message. Lucia's Facebook status just changed to single. Multiple angry posts about cheating boyfriends. An hour later, Andres' LinkedIn shows he is dealing with personal issues. The guy is in total panic mode. And then, around 4 in the afternoon, the message I had been waiting for. Carmen is calling you. A lot. I looked at my phone. 7 missed calls from my wife, 3 voicemails I did not bother to listen to, and a series of increasingly frantic text messages. Diego, call me, please. Something terrible happened. I need to come home. Please, just answer your phone. Instead of replying, I left work early and headed home to execute the final phase. I had already moved most of my important belongings to Roberto's house over the last 3 weeks, just a little at a time so Carmen would not notice. What was left was mostly furniture and shared items that Maria had advised me to document, but not take. I was sitting quietly at our kitchen table, divorce papers spread out in front of me, when Carmen's car screeched into the driveway around 5:30. She burst through the front door like a hurricane, her makeup smudged, her hair disheveled, looking as if her entire world had collapsed, which, to be fair, It had. Diego, she cried desperately. Thank God you are home. The craziest thing happened today. Andres, you remember I mentioned Andres from work occasionally? Well, he has been harassing me. His girlfriend, Lucia, somehow got fake photos and messages and thinks we have been having an affair. It is completely crazy, but she sent them to Elena too, and now everyone thinks. Carmen, I said calmly, without looking up from the papers. Sit down. Something in my tone must have registered because she stopped mid-sentence. She saw the divorce papers, saw my calm expression, and I saw the color drain from her face as the pieces fell into place. Those were not fake photos, I continued. Andres was not harassing you. I know about the 3-year affair. I know about the hotel rooms during my business trips. I know about the dinner you charged to our credit card while my mother was in emergency surgery. I know you told your friends that I am pathetically trusting while I make you coffee every morning after you spend the night with another man. Carmen's legs gave out, and she collapsed into the chair across from me. Diego, can I explain? You already did, I said, sliding the divorce papers across the table. 3 weeks ago on our back porch. I heard every word. The next hour was like watching someone's personality completely fracture. First came the denial. This is all a misunderstanding. Andres and I are just friends. Those photos are from group events. Then anger. You violated my privacy. You have been spying on me. This is psychotic behavior, Diego. Then, desperate bargaining. I will end whatever this is with Andres. We can go to therapy. I will do anything to fix this. Please, do not throw away 9 years over a mistake. But I had already thrown away 9 years the moment I heard her laughing at how foolish I was. By nightfall, the word had spread through her group of friends. Sophia and Patricia, who had been so entertained by my supposed stupidity, were now distancing themselves from the scandal. Carmen's carefully curated Instagram, filled with photos of our perfect marriage, became a source of ridicule as people connected the dots. Her professional reputation took a hit when her disastrous presentation, cut short by her emotional breakdown after Andres' breakup message, became office gossip. The woman who had spent 3 years managing a perfect deception could not handle a single day when the truth came out. And I felt nothing but cold satisfaction as I watched the house of lies she had built collapse exactly as methodically as I had planned. The divorce proceedings moved faster than I had expected, mainly because Maria had built such an airtight case that Carmen's lawyer recommended she settle on our terms rather than drag things out in court. Spain's adultery laws worked exactly as advertised. Carmen's 3-year affair disqualified her from any significant alimony, and with all the financial evidence showing how she had used our joint accounts to fund her betrayal, she left with basically nothing more than her personal belongings and half of the debt. Your husband was very thorough, I overheard her lawyer tell her during one of our final meetings. Fighting this would only cost you more money that you do not have. Carmen's world continued to unravel in ways I had not even planned. Her job performance, already damaged by the disastrous presentation and the emotional fallout, never recovered. Her colleagues, who knew about the affair, treated her differently, and within 2 months, she was demoted from marketing coordinator to administrative assistant. The tech startup culture, which had once embraced her confident, social media-savvy personality, suddenly felt toxic when everyone knew about her personal drama. She resigned after 3 months and moved back in with her parents in Seville, a 40-year-old woman starting over in her childhood bedroom. Sophia and Patricia, her loyal friends who had found my trust so pathetically amusing, disappeared from her life the moment the scandal broke. It turns out that friendship built on shared gossip and mockery does not survive when you become the person everyone is talking about. Her Instagram, once filled with carefully staged photos of our perfect marriage, went completely dark. Meanwhile, Lucia bounced back remarkably quickly. Roberto kept me updated through mutual connections on social media. She started dating a guy from her yoga class within a month, and they looked genuinely happy together. Sometimes the trash really takes itself out. As for me, the first few months were harder than I had expected. I had been so focused on executing my plan that I had not prepared myself for the empty silence that followed. The apartment I rented felt hollow, and I found myself missing the routine of married life, even the fake version I had been living. I started seeing a therapist, Dr. Morales, who helped me work through the complex emotions of betrayal, revenge, and rebuilding. You orchestrated a very effective response to a devastating betrayal, he told me during one session. But now you need to focus on building something new instead of just tearing something old down. He was right. I joined a hiking group that met every Saturday morning, something I never could have done when Carmen controlled our weekend social calendar with her fake client events and girls' nights. The mountains around Valencia became my sanctuary, and the people I met there knew nothing about my divorce drama. They just saw Diego the hiker. Diego who always brought extra trail mix. Diego who had a decent sense of humor and did not mind driving to the more remote trailheads. Through the hiking group, I met Andrea, a nurse who had moved to Valencia for a fresh start after her own difficult breakup. We started as hiking buddies, became friends, and eventually, something more. She knew about my divorce, but she was not intimidated by it. She understood that sometimes you have to blow up your life to build a better one. For months after the divorce was finalized, I was having coffee before a Saturday hike when I saw Carmen sitting alone at a corner table. She looked different, older, more tired, but also somehow more genuine than she had appeared in years. Our eyes met, and instead of the dramatic confrontation I might have expected, she simply walked over to my table. "Diego," she said quietly, "I know I am probably the last person you want to see, but I wanted to say something if you will let me." I gestured to the empty chair across from me, curious in spite of myself. "I am moving to Denver next week," she continued, "starting completely over. New job, new city, new everything. And before I left, I needed to tell you that I am sorry. Not sorry I got caught. Not sorry things ended badly, but genuinely sorry for what I did to you. You did not deserve any of it." There was no manipulation in her voice, no angle, no attempt to rewrite history, just a broken person taking responsibility for her decisions. "Thank you for saying that," I replied, and I meant it. "I hope Denver works out for you." We sat in silence for a moment, and I realized something remarkable had happened. I felt nothing, not anger, not satisfaction, not sadness, just indifference towards someone who had once been the center of my universe. That night, I deleted all the evidence files from my computer, my phone, and my cloud storage. Maria had advised me to keep them indefinitely, but I did not need them anymore. Carmen had learned that choices have consequences, and I had learned that my own resilience was stronger than I had ever imagined. 3 weeks later, Andrea and I went on our first official date to a restaurant that Carmen and I had never been to. We ordered wine I had never tasted and talked about futures we were building instead of pasts we were escaping. The devoted husband was gone, but the man who had replaced him was someone I actually liked. Sometimes new beginnings are not about loss. They are about finally becoming who you were always meant to be.